Thinking about our independence, wondering if we are still a sovereign after 50 plus 1 years? Pause. Think about it with intentional thought and consider where we go from here. Stay tuned and hear what I got to say, Dale Happy Knowles, about how sovereign the 242 feels.
Something to think about with Dale Happy Knowles. What we think, we become. What we radiate, we attract. What we imagine, we surely can achieve. Let's change the narrative, 242.
Welcome to Something to Think About with Dale Happy Knowles, and today we here run short, single. You got me all for yourself, and this is something that a couple of my friends have been asking me to do for a little while, and I keep stanching about doing an individual show under this banner. But tonight I figured we'll do it. This is the end of the Independence Month, and we figured we would do something in that light. And so we're here today, and we'd like to thank our sponsors, Namdev Enterprises and Pasha Investments, and we ask you to join them. Ask all the questions that you can ask as we talk about this lovely subject this evening. The subject that we can talk about is are we sovereign after 50 plus 1 years? This thing started a long time ago. We started up until the time when we came and got up to the point where we got our independence order. And from that independence order, we were able to have a number of things conveyed to us through an act of parliament from the British, as we were colonials at that time, subjects to their system of governance. And so this evening we want to find out, after 50 plus 1 years, are we sovereign? And we want to hear from you. We want to know what you, the people in the 242, that's Bahamians and those who function in the 242, got to say about it. We want to know what you're thinking, what you think we should do different, and how we should move forward, how you would like us to move forward. What is it, digital? Is it analog? We want to stay in? Do what we want to do. Let's just let ourselves know these things. So, as I said, whatever we do, ask all the questions you have, and we'll endeavor to answer these questions. But let's start first and foremost with the basics. And I was taught a long time ago that what we should do when we have a topic is to define what is the actual subject. And so today we're talking about sovereignty. And sovereignty, Jane Bowden is saying that sovereignty is the full right and power of a governing body over itself, without an interference from outside sources or bodies. Now, there's a lot to dive into in that, but basically it's saying that it is the ultimate authority, and we shouldn't be having external interference from anybody on our authority. And so the way I grew up was the only thing that could cause me to do something different was me. It wasn't going to be somebody else. They could do whatever they want to do. They could smoke dope, they could drink liquor, they could do whatever they want to do. But it's me who's going to do it, not them. They do it to themselves. But to me, it's me. I have to do it. And so as a nation, we have to maintain our sovereignty if that's what we want. And so we have a government that we give proxy to manage our affairs on a daily basis. But it's us who have to make sure that those things are done with accountability and transparency, etc., and integrity. And so as we move from there, we want to continue to move on from light to light. And hopefully in the next 50 years, we will move this country so far ahead as to where at the rate it was going before, that we would be able to be not just the gem of the Caribbean, but the pride of the whole world. So, talk about the what Jane said, but the Merriam-Webster says that's the supreme power, especially over a body politic. It's the freedom of external control. Freedom, keyword. And it's a controlling influence. So, what do we as a people want from sovereignty? What does sovereignty mean to us? That's what we want to hear today, that you to tell us that we're going to be talking about. And so, one of the things we talk about here is self-determination. Sovereignty allows the country to make its own decisions without external influences, ensuring that politics and the laws reflect the will and needs of its people. I talked about the independence order, and going into independence, which produced a constitution that we are to be followed, which is our supreme law. And all of our laws are supposed to be in alignment with that constitution, not in conflict. And sometimes we wonder when some of these laws come about if we are really living up to that. And yes, we, not the politicians, we the people out there, because it's us who put them there to act on our behalf, and it's us to shape them up, to make sure and rattle them sometimes so they can know that they're going off course. The people are people, and people are going to do what they think is right, but that don't necessarily mean it's going to be right, because they're going to have pressures from all kind of places to do something different. So that's what we want to make sure, is that we have self-determination. Cultural preservation. So sovereignty enables a nation to preserve and promote its cultural heritage, traditions, and values without external impositions. Now, I don't know if we really having that, because there's a global movement for a number of things, but those things are not necessarily a part of our culture. And so it's up to us to decide whether we want to keep it as we were, or we want to add some of the modern traditional 5-letter companies, etc., to be here, or people who subscribe to being something that they might not have been born as, or who they think they were born as, and the like. And so I don't want to put anybody individual on the spot or anything like that, but what I want to say is that that decision has to come from the people, or it comes from the people. And if we don't do anything, that's a decision by itself. And we say to the politicians that we agree with the direction the country is going. So these are the kind of things that we have to think about as we move forward. The economic control. Well, we went through majority rule. It gave us political equality. And I think we've been running behind our tail trying to catch up with economic equality from then. So to me, if we didn't get economic equality, that means that we don't have economic control of what's happening here. I think there's a lot of things going on in our country which really is driven by external forces. Our biggest market is tourism. And we saw during COVID where we shut down, and that went to near zero, relatively speaking, compared to what it was. And so that's in itself is something that's controlled by external. Because if the people stop coming, then we don't have no control over that economic belt. So the words here is that sovereign nations can control their own economic policies, trade agreements, and resource management, which can lead to a better economic stability and growth tailored to their special needs. Well, we have special needs, but I don't know if we are pointing our economic policies to address those special needs. And yes, we control our trade to a certain point because sometimes we sign on to treaties and they give us things that we have to do. And we'll touch on something soon as to one of the reasons why I say we don't have the economic control. Political stability, that I think we are almost the head of the class, if not the head of the class, in that we have yet to have anything way out for as long as we have had a democracy that could say it's been disruptive to our way of life. Say for things like the Burma Road riots and stuff like that happened back then, that had to do with labor and so forth. I think they would have been the closest things in modern times to be able to say we would have anything to do with any instability. So, national security. Well, being a little itty bitty nation of islands, it's a good thing the good Lord blessed us and put us right in the bosom of the United States, the biggest superpower there is. Because I think that helps with our national security, that we are nestled there. But in the late 60s, we had internal rule, but our internal rule was missing the foreign affairs, so we didn't have control of foreign affairs and we didn't have control of national security. And so that came about and that gave us full internal rule. But the people didn't want just the internal rule, and they told the government we wanted independence. A couple of years later, 1973, we had independence, which is what we celebrate now, 50+1 years. Still young, very young. A lot to mature about? Yes. A lot that we should already mature in? Yes. So we just need to figure out where we want to go from here. And so these things we talk about. A foreign nation can maintain and control its own military and security forces, ensuring the protection of its borders and citizens. And we do that to a certain degree. We partner with the United States in a lot of things in relation to our borders, because what happens in our space also impacts their space. And the resources that we need for who all is trying to get into the United States from this side of their vineyard. I don't know if we have the resources to take care of all of that. Right? The legal autonomy. Sovereignty allows a country to establish and enforce its own legal system, which can be more aligned with its social norms and values. Well, we inherited an awesome legal system. Now, whether we practice that to the T, I don't even know if the persons who designed that system practice it to the T. But we don't live there, we live here. So we have to come up with a way to cause more compliance in our system, to cause us to be more swift in our actions. Because when things take too long, then people start to don't take any importance of it. And they just continue to do and do and do and do, and then the new do becomes the norm. And we accept that versus trying to go back to where we wanted to be. But things transitioned so far. Now we up to some really, really disturbing things in a certain quarter. The rest of the Bahamas is pretty much good, but it's just one segment of our demographics that basically is having a free-for-all and lost sight of the direction of which our national anthem speaks. But those are things that we have to work through in these 50 years to come. Right? And so we talk about allowing a country to enforce its own legal system. right now, we still have the Privy Council. That's come from the British system. And we might want to decide at some point that we want to have our own. Now, why we had the Privy Council, I was told many different things, but one of the things I was told was that it was to give persons confidence that there will still be fairness in the ruling coming up to a new independent nation from a country predominantly of black people, and there was some fears along the table. I guess those fears should be rightful because some people did some things that was not right to black people. But, you know, the Bahamas lives above and only take the low road. Global influence. We talk about the global influence. Sovereign nations can participate independently in international organizations and negotiations, giving them a voice on the global stage. Well, we see the Prime Minister running around lobbying here and there, trying to get action that is going to help people of the island states, particularly with this climate change and all of the symptoms that come from it. It's causing the water levels to rise and will soon, relatively speaking, shrink at least 3 meters or so from the coast, and all the land is going to start to disappear. Eventually, if that keeps happening, sooner or later, the little Bahamas will be a real Atlantis again, underwater. So these are things that we have to do. We have to get in the system and work the system so that people become sensitive to what is happening in little countries like ours. At the same token, you have people out there who want to control us. And so you have things like the blacklisting that have been going on for umpteen years. And also, now that seemed like we've caught up in addressing all of the issues that they keep putting on the table, we've been sort of on a honeymoon from blacklisting. And so there'll be some other things that we'll have to tackle as we move. But ask your questions, people. Ask your questions. The economic opportunity, that's the promise of the majority rule. Coming from a fishing village of sorts, persons of undereducated people, and now we have people, at least 4 Rhodes Scholars, wealth of people who sit around tables with kings and queens, and so forth. And we could hold our own with anybody. We do it on the track, we do it in the classroom, we do it in business. So it's just a matter now of using that brain power to take advantage of the opportunities that's on the table. We have tourism as our #1 industry. And that tourism industry, I don't believe that we come even close to maximizing or scratching the surface of the potential that comes from tourism. We've heard the Minister of Tourism speaking this week about calls for enterprising to take advantage of the cruise ships, tourists who come, all the 5+ million of them or what have you that's going to be coming at this time. And so we are craft-oriented people, but we need to also become more entrepreneurial and have the machinery in place in order to support the people. Yes, there's been massive improvement, but are we where we need to be? No, because we're still playing catch-up. Why catch-up? I don't know. Digital, for example, that's a whole 20 years behind. It was 20 years ahead. Not so much as 20 years ahead, but it was a couple of years ahead of the pack. At one point, back in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, etc. And then we sort of put our foot on the brakes and say we're not going to do anything in this space. And now we're trying to catch up again. But we are poised that once we put our intentional thoughts behind it, we could catch up and go ahead very quickly. Because that's a very limber or nimble industry to be in. And everything that we do in the analog world or the real world, we could do in the digital world. So if you have mindset out there to do, team up with somebody who is digital minded, or give us a call, shoot us up, and we'll steer you in the right direction. But digital, we saw it after COVID, how quickly people ramped up and adapted for that. So you had things like a couple food companies, delivery and what have you come about. All of those because of the digital space, because we couldn't socialize and what have you because of the emergency orders that were in place to address things like COVID. And so those are things that we have to focus on. But this economic control and economic opportunities has to be the number one priority from a majority rule point of view. Health, safety, education, etc. always is going to be at the top of the list. But we're talking about things that you don't have to do, but you should do. Those are what I'm speaking of when I say opportunities and economic being a priority. Public accountability. We had a prime minister at one point now went away and said the country was all in a certain way. Everybody is doing things in a corrupt way. I think that was a little extreme, and maybe the words might have been out of place in the way he said it. But nobody is denying that there's not corruption in the Bahamas. But I wouldn't go as far as to say, excuse me, corruption at the level that to speak in those forums where he was. Because when we look at some of these countries near to us and bigger than us, the things that they've done is way bigger than anything that has ever happened in the Bahamas that we are aware of in the public domain. Right? And so citizens can hold their own government accountable through democratic processes, ensuring that leaders act in the best interest of the nation. And that's what I was saying earlier. We have to hold them accountable and force them to do the things that they need to be doing on our proxy. Because it's our proxy, it's our power, the people's power, that they act in government. And I'm not talking about any party. I'm talking about government of the Bahamas. Because the government of the Bahamas does not stop. That is continuous. And so we just need to make those. And actually, by the way, the majority of the people who have the most power in government are the people who are continuous in government, not the elected few. But, somehow we allow the elected few to steer the whole ship and don't use our institutional knowledge to guide and correct when things are going a little off course. Then there are people who do it, but I don't think it's enough who do it on a consistent basis. Human rights, big challenge for not people. It's a hot topic. We have a couple of shows during the day that talk pretty much almost every day. That's all they talk about, human rights. But a lot of these human rights that they're talking about are things that people try and impose their view of human rights on the Bahamas. And that's why I asked the question about, are we sovereign after 50+1? Because our Constitution gives all free reign here in the Bahamas within the confines of the laws of the Bahamas. But that doesn't mean that everybody have to accept the way your values, your core values, etc. and move with it. The majority has a view, and that majority view should be respected. And you can't bully your way into something that they don't want. Nobody's stopping you from practicing what you practice, but that's no reason to say that you are entitled to have the same things everybody else have. That's not so. You are entitled to exercise your right. But as Supreme Court justices have told me before, I don't have the right to practice my right at the expense of your right, because that's just a wrong. And the courts will deal with you for it if you insist on doing that. So these are some of the things that we should be striving for when we talk about sovereignty of the nation. Well, for me, I believe in something that he created called the New Built Environment. And it is the political, economic, and social environment of our society found and formulated through intentional and thought and action, designed to create the greatest opportunity to build the highest quality of life for our citizens, residents, and those subscribing to and supporting the culture of the 242, and which will provide sustainability for generations to come. Not just us, not just my corner, generations. And you know, one time ago, generations was 40 years, now it's something like 20 years. But you know, we now, if we use the 20 years, we now on our third generation since independence. Some of the philosophies are still the same. So we need to get moving with that too, if we want to move the country forward. Yeah. So what you think? You out there? Ask some questions. Tell me what you're doing. What you would like. Put some things on the table. And we need to talk about them. When we talk about the new built environment, the sun, sand, sea, digital, and people. Sun, renewable energies, etc. Light industries. These are all light industries. So you don't need no special big things to come here and devour our beauty as a country and what have you. That's our sovereign right to have our country stay the way it is. We don't need all these different great things to come. So my view is the light industries is what the Bahamas should be all about. And so we have the solar and renewables and stuff. We could create light industries in that and have our own unique sovereign view as to how we play in that space. Sand. We're right now debating cannabis. Well, cannabis, bush medicines, and all those different things, to me, that's an industry by itself, or industries by themselves, that we could use to continue to build our wealth. You know, and we talk about $12, $13 billion economy now, with a deficit being almost 50%. But we could easily get out of that, because we believe the new built environment is $100 billion economy. And so we have the sand, which deals with all the things that come out the ground that we could create. Right now, a lot of these pharmaceuticals are coming to the Bahamas and places like the Bahamas, doing their research, taking the information back, and developing their own medicines that they sell in pharmacies and stuff like that. So why can't we do something similar, but with our own? You have PharmaCam just closed the other day. That's a whole facility sitting there that we could look at and create some sort of mechanism from that to generate some things on our side. Yeah, it takes money, but I never know the world will be short of money. So we do money for everything else. We go get the money for these things too. And then we come up to the sea. Well, I have some friends from university who tell me that the marine safari that we have is huge. I don't know how much money we get from it, but based on what we register in the House of Assembly, it can't be that much. But they tell me by itself, the shark industry is a $2 billion industry. And my friends down there in Anders tell me we're not collecting anything from that. But that's a different thing altogether, because when we look at all of that, it seems like we still have the mindset from a colonial state where we like to go and get everything and develop from outside in versus inside out, and some of those things. We already touched on digital a little bit, digital wonderland. I have that view of a digital wonderland in the Bahamas. The whole Bahamas could be a smart city. It's connected straight across the board, and most of the sea is connected between the islands, etc. And so whatever you could dream of, we could do in the Bahamas. All we have to do is set up the right framework so investors could come in and spend their money and use our brain power and their brain power and put it together. And they could have the traditional sunshine and sea whilst they do their work in the digital. And like we know our people is already quite creative. There's no parade greater in the world than Junkanoo. And that's creativity. The same people who we kick out of high school and say they dumb, daft, stupid, whatever it is, are the same ones who creating all of these super duper costumes and stuff like that. That something's wrong with that picture. Right? Obviously, to me, it just means that we're not connecting with them in the right way to get them to produce the best. We go on the world stage of sports. How many we have in the NBA? The 2 fastest quarter milers was Bahamian. We had the Golden Boys and the Golden Girls, Golden Knights and the Golden Girls relays, and so forth. It's a history of that. Baseball, you have the Little Giant and all of the new ones all the way up to Jazz Chisholm today, doing supernatural things. Right? So all we got to do is continue to do what we need to do and build our country from strength to strength. So if you don't have any questions, then I'm glad that you took the time to listen to what I had to say today. Hopefully you will use it, create some avenues, develop some people, and we'll move from here, from strength to strength. So till next time, same place, same back channel. Sayonara.
Enjoyed the show? Then subscribe to us for more educational and inspirational content. Ring the bell so you never miss a show. Let's change the narrative 242.